You want to choose your core value that's going to serve you in whatever it is that you want to accomplish. So for me, when I started to do some of this work, I started to realize I lacked confidence and boldness when it came to getting up in front of audiences to speak. So I choose one of my core values to be boldness.
Well, hello there, and thank you for tuning in to the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. I'm your host, Sam Hind, and I'm here to help inspire you to step into your fullest potential and have the business that you dream of and, most importantly, that you deserve. But that all starts with being intentional and knowing how to be the best version of yourself, what strategies to implement, and who to surround yourself with. As you come into my podcast each week, I'm going to be introducing you to various guests, people from around the world that can help you to give you strategies to be that version of yourself that you're so excited to step into, but most importantly, to create some awareness around what that needs to look like. This week is no exception to that rule, and I am so excited to introduce you to a very special guest, somebody who you may already know, and that would be Colin Egglesfield. Colin is a Hollywood actor. He's a published author. He is a certified life coach. He's an MC, but he's also a trainer with a company he started called Beyond Impact. He's all about helping people step into their most confident, courageous self and all that they were put on this earth to become. Colin is an inspiration, and that is also the value that he steps forward with, and he'll talk about that in the podcast episode that you're about to listen into. I know you're going to love this episode. Most importantly, it comes from somebody who is not only skilled when it comes to being courageous and confident in front of people, but somebody who had to work very, very hard at being that. Colin shares his backstory and how he has gone through a self-awareness journey and also a journey of finding that inner courage and intention that we all need to have if we're going to be that version of ourselves that we were put here to become. So my question to you is, as you tune into this episode, who do you want to become? What are you committed to? And as you're listening to this episode, I want you to remember this one key thing. Take one thing away that you are going to implement straight away. Colin drops loads of golden nuggets throughout this episode, so it was my absolute honor and privilege to be on a front seat here to be able to help him deliver this message to you today. So enjoy the episode. I know you will. Grab your pen and paper and get ready for some gold. Okay, so Colin, I would really love for those in our audience that maybe they've seen you in something, they might have seen one of your movies or they might have read your book. I would love for you to share something that people might not expect about you beyond your acting career.
I'm a shy introvert.
I suspected as much when I learned a little bit more about what you're doing now. So you're a shy introvert. Can you explain a bit more about that? Because I think a lot of people have a misconception around what extrovert and introvert actually means.
Yeah. So just for anyone out there who's introverted and is terrified of getting up in front of audiences or being in front of the camera, I'm telling you, there's hope, because if I can do this and get over my fear of performing in front of millions of people on the top stages with the likes of Kate Hudson and Sylvester Stallone, I'm telling you, there is hope. You don't have to be confined or trapped in who you think you are. Growing up outside of Chicago in the Midwest, I was the middle child. My older sister and my younger brother always seemed to just be more talkative and outgoing. And as I started to get older, I just realized or felt like I was relegated to that middle child syndrome where I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'm not the oldest, I'm not the youngest, I'm kind of right there in the middle. And as I started to go to school, I got into that whole go to school, get a job, and something just didn't feel right to me. And when I was going to school, I was planning on going to medical school, but it wasn't something that I feel like at 21 years old, I was 100% sure about doing. In my senior year at the University of Iowa, I heard on the radio about this, come to the Model Search America. You can travel the world and whatever. And I was like, well, that sounds interesting. And I went to this thing, got hooked up with an agency, and then I got sent to Milan, Italy, and Paris and London. And I started traveling, which was really exciting. But it really opened up my eyes to what's out there in the world. And I think sometimes if we are stuck in these bubbles of where we grew up without really keep being able to experience what the world has to offer, it's difficult for us to believe that we have the ability to do and be and have more than what we know ourselves to be. And so that experience made me realize that there's a whole world out there, and there's a lot of different people out there who have different beliefs, whether that's religious or political, and that there's not one right way to do it. And so it made me realize that even though I came from a great family and great upbringing, I realized that there's many different ways and to have a career, and that the one road map to happiness doesn't necessarily have to be the right path for every single person out there, because everyone is different. And so as I was going on this journey, I ended up in New York City, and with modeling, you don't have to say anything because it's basically just pictures. So I felt comfortable doing that. But as soon as I started going on these commercial auditions where you had to say words, for whatever reason, my brain and my body would just short circuit, and I would get all nervous and anxious. And I started to remember of like when I was in, fifth and sixth grade, having to get up in school and say something. And as soon as you say something stupid in school, you're dead in the water. You get
Yeah.
made fun of, you get criticized. Growing up, I had headgear and braces, and I wanted to disappear. I did not want to be, seen. But as we get older and we start to realize that a big part of our happiness in life has to do with being seen and heard, if we haven't had the practice or the a safe space to share who we are, we can stay in these self-enclosed bubbles of isolation that
Yep.
prevent us from really showing people or communicating to people who we really are, what we want. And I was fortunate to be in New York and go on these auditions. And my agent at the time said, "You seem to be good with this modeling thing. Have you ever thought about doing TV and film?" And the idea of that was exciting, watching Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt do all these movies. But I was like, I that's not me. I get nervous in front of people. So I just figured that would never ever be possible for me. And my acting teacher said, or my agent said, "Why don't you take this acting class just to see if you like it?" And so at 24 years old, I jumped into this acting class. And I'm telling you, Sam, it was an incredible experience because it gave me a roadmap and some insight and some strategy for how to authentically communicate with another human being.
Mhm.
Where else would you learn how to stand in front of another human being and practice saying words that were on a page? So I didn't have to come up with the words, but when I was reading these amazing scripts and scenes, I was like, wow, this is what I've always been wanting to say. I just didn't know how to say it. And the other person, because they had lines too, they had to stand in front of me and they couldn't run away. They had to stand there in front of me. And so you practice
Yeah.
being intimately next to someone, and we see it every day nowadays, where especially after COVID, where people haven't been used to being around people. A lot of people experience social anxiety
Yeah.
and just haven't had a whole lot of experience connecting with someone on these deep levels. And acting class, I would encourage anyone to take an acting class or something somewhat similar to an acting class. And that's exactly what I do with my courses, is that I essentially bring all of my acting techniques and insights to a safe environment to teach people, whether you're an actor or a non-actor, how to intimately and authentically connect with another human being. And these are I'm telling you, this stuff has made a huge impact in my life, not just with my career. And the evidence is, all you got to do is Google me and you'll see me on in all these movies and TV shows. These techniques and these skills work. It's just a matter of learning them and having a place to practice them, because it does take some time to be able to learn this stuff, implement it to where you can
Yeah.
start believing that you are capable of doing uh, implementing these techniques on your own.
Yeah. Do you know, it's really interesting that you say all of this, because this is a conversation I'll often have when I'm teaching people to do Facebook Lives and show up on camera. And there's that fear. And they say, well, it's easy for you because you find it really easy to get on camera. And my response to that is, you've got no idea what it took and what it takes for me to show up. And if you ever saw me on stage, if you saw me 5-10 minutes before I got on that stage, you would see me behind the scenes, number one, beginning with the hyperventilating, but
Yes.
then dealing with that because I've got a process now that I had to put into place so I could show up. But the really interesting thing is, and I love what you've just said, because to me, actually what's worse than getting on stage is what happens in the lead up. Because what I do is I push myself to rehearse with someone. Might be Greg, it might be someone in the team, it could be anybody, over and over and over again. The reason is, when I get on that stage, I want to know if anyone were to heckle me, if anything happened, if the tech went down, if the microphone stopped working, if anything happens, I want to know that, number one, it's drilled in so much so that I can just kind of keep going and rolling, and I don't miss a beat. But the other thing is that I actually find it far more nerve-wracking to deal with someone one-on-one in a situation where you know you're going to make mistakes because you're not perfectly practiced yet. And that rehearsing, I remember when I did some acting classes when I was in high school. The thing for me was not when I got on stage and did the actual fully rehearsed show, whatever it was that we were doing at the time. It was the rehearsal in front of people where it was like red and raw, and I had no idea. That was way worse. Is that like, I feel like that's more character building, is the rehearsing or the doing it in front of someone before you know what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say acting class was definitely a nerve-wracking experience
Yeah.
because, it's especially when you're first starting a new acting class and you don't know anyone in there. And so it's great practice in becoming comfortable in uncomfortable situations.
Yeah.
And one of my acting teachers, the first time I showed up for class, he said, "All right, Colin, excited to have you in the class. We've got about 25 people in there, and what I'd like you to do is prepare a song for us when you come to class." I said, "Well, that's all right because I don't sing." And he said, "No, that's all right. You're going to sing anyway." So I was like, "Oh crap!" I was starting to freak out because I was like, "I just don't sing. I don't have a great voice. I'm not musically inclined." But he said, "Don't worry." So I get to the class and I rehearsed "Fly Me to the Moon, Let Me Play Amongst the Stars." So I learned that song and I come into the class, and of course, like you said, it's the anticipation
Yeah.
of before you get up there, because our brains are designed to protect us from what they
Yeah.
perceive to be as dangerous situations.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of this is mental mindset shifting from your focus to, am I going to die and how,
Yeah.
to what kind of an impact do I want to make, or
Yeah.
choosing, you know what, I'm going to make this situation as fun as possible, and prompting your brain similar to how we prompt chat gpt. If you create the correct prompts for your brain is incredibly powerful at giving you the answer. Most of the time we just give it the wrong prompt. And so I would just practice, okay, how can I have the most fun in this situation that I know is going to be uncertain and scary? And so I got up in front of the class, sang the song, forgot the first the line, had to start over, and sweaty and just like whatever.
Yes.
Go to run off the stage, and my acting teacher said, "Okay, Colin, great, come on back here." And I said, he said, "Okay, now I want you to bark that song like a dog." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? This is already humiliating." And so he said, "Bark that song like a dog." And he said, "It depends. You will only do this if you get connected to how committed you are in becoming a successful actor. So, what that does is it made me realize, okay, how badly do I want to be a
How much
successful
do I
actor?
want this? Yeah.
How badly do you want to be successful in your business? How
Yep.
badly do you want to have a loving relationship?
Yep.
It's important to get supremely connected to the outcome that you desire so
Yep.
that it'll pull you through those challenging times so that when you do hit those roadblocks, you can remind yourself, okay, this is scary, this is uncomfortable, but I know if I do this, it's in service of me getting to that end
Yeah.
goal. And
Yeah.
so, like, all right, so I'm going to bark my song like a dog. And then after I finished that, he said, great, now that you made a complete ass of yourself in front of all these people, now you can do anything.
Yeah.
And so it was I mean, it was true. So now, after
Like
showing
nothing could be
everyone all
worse
my
than that,
cards,
right?
nothing was worse than that.
Yeah.
And so this is what I teach my clients when it comes to public speaking. Most of the time, we try to hide the icky parts and the insecurity parts of who we are. And there was a really great quote that I heard that said, when people are trying to master something, they will try to hide their flaws. But he said, experts will try to hide their flaws, masters will reveal them.
Mhm.
And so the more that you can just show up authentically to your audience, and for me, it was going into these auditions with the mindset of, this is who I am. It's what, you know, this is what I got. And I'm going to show you to the best of my ability what I can do, knowing that it may not be what you're looking for, but I know that if I stay committed to this, that you're going to keep learning with every experience and then just keep recommitting to why you are there in the first place. It's got to be that bigger, more inspiring vision, and stay connected to what you are doing in the moment. What is
Yep.
that in service of?
Yep. Yeah. Wow. Um, Colin, you've had such an incredible journey from Hollywood acting through to being a life coach, through to high performance coaching, and everywhere in between. You've now published not one but two books, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But I'm really keen to know, you've had a big health journey as well. Was there a particular life moment where you realized that confidence wasn't just something that was nice to have, but it was an essential part of showing up and being seen in the world?
Yeah, that's, I mean, the the very way that you structured that question in terms of confidence, it wasn't just a luxury or something that I hoped that I would have. Once you get diagnosed with, when a doctor tells you you have cancer, late stage cancer, I mean, for me, it's pretty obvious. You could either just say, okay, well, I give up, or you can say, and this is what I did. I decided that I needed to decide who I wanted to be in the face of this uncertainty.
Yep.
And the confidence came from me digging deep and deciding, do I want cancer to define who I am, where I'm just going to wake up every morning being afraid and scared and worried? Or can I show up in life for myself and for the people that are in my life? And at that time, I was working on All My Children, the soap opera.
Mhm.
And it was early on in my career. I was 20, what was it? 32 years old when I was diagnosed with testicular cancer. And when you're acting, you have to, with certainty, choose who this character is to be able to play the role, right? And so I realized that if I applied that same strategy towards my health journey, who do I need to play, or what role do I need to play with certainty in order for me to be able to even get out of bed in the morning,
Yep.
to be able to go to work and perform on this TV show? Because so I was being seen by millions, and no one knew that I was sick and going through this surgery and radiation treatment until during the late stages of my radiation treatment. I was feeling sick and tired, and I didn't look good. And one of my directors came up to me and said, "Are you all right?" In between takes, and I broke down. I at that moment I
Like
realized
the
that
worst question anyone can ask, isn't it? You okay?
yeah, you don't look so good. And I tried to hide all this and hold it in and not tell anyone because I was worried about if I told people that I was sick or had cancer, am I going to get fired from this job? Because I'd worked, for 8 or 9 years really hard to get to my first real contract acting job. And so I got hired on this job and I'm like, oh my God, this is it. I made it. I don't have to eat ramen noodles anymore. I can, I was like finally where I wanted to be at 32. And then 6 months into my 3-year contract being diagnosed with cancer, there's a bit of denial that you just don't want to accept the reality of this. And it came to a head where I had to accept the reality of it. And I think it's the more that you can start to take responsibility and ownership of whatever it is that you're going through, that's the leverage for where you can then start to ask yourself, who do I choose to be in the face of this? Do I want to be a victim? Do I want to be afraid and scared? And for me, that's not how I want to live my life. So really life is all about asking a series of questions and again, creating these empowering prompts that allow you to be able to step into the role that you choose to be. And a lot of it had to do from some of this acting training that I've learned that I now share in all my
Yeah.
courses and teachings.
Yeah, awesome. And I definitely want to talk about that a little later on for anyone that wants to learn a little bit more about how they can do some of that training with you. But what if someone's listening to this right now and they're thinking, okay, well, I'm trying to grow a business. I'm doing something that for me feels really unfamiliar. A lot of our audience are people who haven't been in business before. They're growing something that is a very first time thing for them. And I know for many of them, the question would be, well, how do I need to show up? Because I'm not quite sure what that looks like. What would you say
Mhm.
to that?
So, quick, easy thing you can do to start with is choose who you are foundationally,
Mhm.
and that is connected to what it is that you want to accomplish in your life. And so, what that looks like is when we get a script and we read the script and then we find out who that character is in that role, we have to decide and get down to the very deep level, core level of who this character is. And there's essentially a few core values when it comes to creating a character. There's the core value of love, there's core value of power, justice, truth. You look at Tom Cruise in the movie A Few Good Men, where he questions Jack Nicholson on the stand. He's willing to throw his whole life and his whole career away because he is so devoted to I want the truth. And then there's other people who are defined by power. Trump is defined by power. His whole existence is predicated and built on creating power, demonstrating power, speaking through the lens of power. Then there's other people who speak through the lens of love. So you want to choose your core value that's going to serve you in whatever it is that you want to accomplish. So
Yeah.
for me, when I started to do some of this work, I started to realize I lacked confidence and boldness when it came to getting up in front of audiences to speak. So I choose one of my core values to be boldness. I choose another one of my core values to be inspiration because I love to be inspired. I love to inspire other people. And then the other one is because I lacked the confidence in being fully self expressed, I choose self expression as one of my core values. So, anyone out there right now, I would encourage you to start thinking about what are your 3 core foundational values that you want to be lived by. And what that looks like is instead of showing up as Colin, I now get to show up and say, and whenever I'm faced with any sort of challenge or issue or whatever, instead of asking, what would Colin do? Because Colin would run for the hills and not want to get up on the stage. Ask, what would inspiration do?
Yeah, right.
Inspiration,
Mhm.
there's an energy to inspiration. So you tap into the energy and the essence of these core values, similar to what we do when we are creating a character to play a role in a film or a TV show.
Yep.
So when you start to think about these core values, think about what is the energy and what would, if you were to act out inspiration, what does that
Mm.
look like? So I have my clients get on their feet and we act out their core values. So it gets you out of your head and into your body. Most
Yep.
people are so disconnected from their head, from their body. And the perfect example for this is you look at little kids. They are so in their bodies that they throw themselves at things and they're so just
Yeah.
nimble and energetic and they radiate with this energy of playfulness and curiosity. And as we get older, because of school, we've been told to sit for 8 hours a day in school, only move when the bell rings.
Yeah.
And what's the answer to this question? We get so disconnected from this.
Yeah.
And this is where we connect with people. Our
Yeah.
bodies are what we connect with people from. And with acting, we do a lot of exercises to get out of our head into our bodies. So the first thing we do, identify these three core values, then we do exercises that drop our awareness from the analytical down into our heart center. And
Yep.
so what you want to do is when you show up in front of an audience, you want to speak to people's hearts. It's not what can I say that's going to impress someone, and it's not what do they think of me. It's I'm going to show up in this situation and I'm going to give the gift of my three core values. So I'm going to show up with the energy of inspiration, self-expression, and boldness to infuse you with inspiration, self-expression, and boldness so that when you leave my presence, you don't necessarily remember what someone says, but you remember how you feel when you were in their presence.
Yeah.
And so you want to think about
One of
how do
my
I
favorite.
want people to feel? What
Yeah.
do they, how do I want people to remember me by? Is it
Yep.
being like knowing the answer and being perfect and that doesn't inspire people. That doesn't resonate. And so what I realized from my early on in my acting, I'd only been studying acting for like 2.5 years. And I was living across the street from the World Trade Center when the towers got hit and from those airplanes. And when I went to my window that morning, I could see the flames coming out of the tower and saw people jumping out, and it was horrendous. It's not something you can unsee. And after the second plane hit, I ran outside and I was standing outside of my apartment looking up and just seeing all these people, jumping from the towers. It was horrible. So I started walking up the street. And then when the first tower fell down, I was one of the people that was running down the street. And then I saw the second tower fall. A few days later, I was finally able to get back into my apartment and my windows were blown in. The place looked like a bomb had blown up inside of my apartment. So I went up there with a national soldier guy and he said, "You have 10 minutes to put whatever you can put into your suitcase and you got to get out of here." So grabbed my stuff, went into a hotel, sat down. And at 27 years old, I was thankful to be alive, first of all. And I asked myself, man, I I'm just grateful to even be here. But I kept thinking about the people that were trapped up in those towers. And I felt like if I were one of those people trapped up in those towers and someone came to me, if God or the universe said, "Colin, I'm going to give you a second chance at life. What are you going to do with it?" I realized at that point in my life, the idea of going out to Hollywood was incredibly scary and intimidating because I only had 2 years of experience. I didn't think I was good enough or had the ability to go out there to start trying to create this career. I had done 2 roles up until that point. One is a male escort on Law& and Order SVU, and another, like, small little role, not the biggest resume to go out to Hollywood with, but what I realized was when I asked myself, "What inspires me? What do I wanna do? Now that I have this second chance at life, do I want to be afraid and never take this opportunity and chance to go out to Hollywood? Or I'm just gonna do it because why not? If not for me, for the people that don't have the opportunity to do the things that we can do. So many of us, so many people would kill to be in our situations where we are healthy enough to be able to get up in front of people. So
Mm.
being able to get up in front of people is a privilege. It shouldn't be looked at as something to fear. It should be looked at as I have the opportunity to make a difference in my audience's life. And proof of this, I went out to Hollywood and I was going into these auditions, and the casting directors and the writers, they would say, this kid doesn't have, he's not a polished actor, but what he has is this, like, I had this just, I was just grateful to be alive. And so I would go into these rooms being like, all right, let's go, let's play, let's do this. And I started getting hired. And so it's proof that you don't have to be the best or the most talented or the smartest or know everything. You just got to show up with enough passion and connection to what you love. And that's what people feel. And that's what
Yeah.
people want to be around. So when, for your audience and anyone listening to this, you don't have to know everything. You just have to care. And
Yeah.
that's what the world needs more of right now, because so many people don't care. And if you can just show up and speak into the listening that I care about you and I'm here to help you and serve you with whatever it is that you need to be successful. And then you just start asking questions. What do you need? Sam, what do you need? How can I help you? What are you looking for? And the more that you can just be actively serving other people, it gets you out of your own head, it gets you out of your own way. And people love when they're around people who are radiating that energy of how
Mhm.
can I serve you, rather than the energy of what's in it for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, that's is so powerful, and you gave me Greg calls it chicken skin when you were talking about that experience, because it's I think sometimes those life moments, those pivots, are when we're being guided to lead and support other people as well, because that story is a really powerful one, and such a big reminder that we've all got a difference to make, but we've all got a life to live, and we get one chance to step into our full potential. You know, I had a really beautiful guest on this podcast not all that long ago, and he talked about how his life mission is both inspiring but also really sad, because he said his life mission is about helping people step into their full potential, but it's really sad because no one ever will. And you know, it's that realization that we've all got so much we can do, but we've only got so long to do it. Um,
Mhm.
but I do want to talk about something that I know a few people right now might be listening to this going, okay, this is all great. I'm loving listening to this. It's really powerful. But I don't get on stage. I've got no reason to get on stage. So this isn't relevant for me. So I really want to ask you about you've got a tagline where you talk about leading with unshakable confidence. What I
Mhm.
want to know is, what does that look like in everyday life, and not just on stage or maybe in a boardroom? How else can that be important for people that might be listening to this?
So when it comes to being unshakable, it really is getting intimately connected to who you are, who you decide to be, and then also knowing with unshakable certainty what you are committed to.
Yeah.
And whether that's committed to growing your business, whether that's committed to having the best marriage or being the best parent to your kids, it's important to remind yourself every day what it is what it is that you are committed to. Otherwise, it's too easy to get triggered by the personal things that people are going to say to you, especially the people that we love and that we are around mostly. It's our family members that most of the time we get triggered by the most, because they know who we are on, very
Yep.
deep intimate levels, that they know
Mhm.
our weaknesses. And so a lot of this work has helped me be able to have a better relationship with my dad, specifically because growing up, what I realized, my dad was a doctor, so he was very precise in everything that he did. Otherwise, people would die if he wasn't, right?
Mhm.
And so when we would load the dishwasher when we were kids, he would come by and rearrange the dishes so that they were perfectly aligned. Or um, I came home from school with a report card. I had A's and B's on my report card, and he said, "Where are all the A's? You're in Egglesfield. We get A's in this household." So the messaging that we receive when we're younger, what it does is it makes us decide who we are. And we end up growing up in life then blaming our parents or school or other people for who we are.
Mhm.
And so we grow up and we exist in this disempowering context. Whereas if we take a look at when those moments happened when we were younger and realize that you were the one that, and I was the one that made that decision about who I was when my dad said, "You're an Egglesfield. We get A's in this household." Now, to my dad, he was just wanting to make sure that I was going to be growing up to be as successful as possible so that I could have the best life. But to an 11-year-old, my brain interpreted that as, in dad's eyes, I'm not perfect. So then what we do is we then try to find ways in life to be perfect, and we will avoid situations or relationships where we feel that we can't be perfect.
Yep.
So it starts to close in the walls. And doing some of this work while I was getting trained for my certified life coaching program, it we do this exercise where we get clear about the integrity that we bring to our life, our relationships, our situations, and where do you get stuck in the emotions of your life and your feelings, and where, if you weren't stuck in those emotions and feelings of, well, I'm not going to apologize because I didn't do this and he did that, and where we get stuck in the story of what we've created for ourselves.
Yep.
If we look at life from the perspective of integrity, and if I'm married to this individual, and if there's a lack of love in the relationship, a lot of times we can get emotionally triggered and focus on, well, you didn't do this and you never tell me I'm beautiful. Whereas if you focus on integrity as what is missing, that if it were restored, it would create workability in whatever it is that you're doing. So instead of getting stuck in the emotions, you can start looking at, okay, what is missing in this relationship or in my career, that if it were present, I would have and be able to do and experience the things that are going to fulfill me. And so with my relationship with my dad, I realized there was a lack of integrity with my relationship with my dad because I was blaming him for what I decided that I needed to be perfect in his eyes. And what my coach had me realize was, he said, "Colin, you're blaming your dad for something that you created." And I was like, "Wait a minute." And he said, "What are you committed to?" And I said, "Well, I want to have a relationship with my dad where I can talk to him about things, but every time I'm around my dad, we argue. We kind of whenever my dad would do something like not program the VCR correctly, I would hammer him. And I'd be like, 'Dad, you're not doing it right. You're not doing it right,' because that's how I felt his
It was.
communication was for me when I was younger."
Yeah.
And so my coach said, "What are you committed to?" And so that's a really simple question you can ask. Are you committed to having a great relationship with your husband, or are you committed to being mad at him for not taking out the garbage and him not telling you you're beautiful? And so this is where we got to take a look at more of a 30,000-foot level of our life and what we are committed to,
Yep.
so that when we show up in a situation to have a conversation, we don't get stuck in the weeds of our emotions and our feelings. We can speak towards, well, what is going to create workability for this, so that you can create a conversation that's not going to be blaming or finger pointing. And when I did with that with my dad, and my coach said, "Go out in the hall, call your dad and apologize to him." And I said, "Why do I'm me apologize? He's the one that, you know, messed me up." And he
Yep.
said, "That's why you're stuck, Colin. That's why you don't have a great relationship with your dad. What are you committed to?" And so I went out in the hall, called my dad, and I apologized to him. And it was such a release. It was difficult because our ego will get in the way.
Yeah.
But what I did was I said, "Dad, I want to apologize for making you wrong
Yeah.
for all these years, because I thought in your eyes I needed to be perfect. And I created that. And because of that, I've been blaming you all these years." And he
Yeah.
said, "Colin, why would you do like why would you do that? I love you. You're my son." I told him, "Remember the report card and the dishes and he said, and he didn't even remember the report card thing. And I was like, I mean, I've been like
Been
living my life
for years, right?
at things that you don't even remember, and this is what we do.
Yeah.
And so we basically grow up and we are operating as adults from
I so
software
agree.
that was
Yeah.
programmed by an upset 8-year-old or
Yeah.
11-year-old.
Yes.
And so this is what I help my clients do is get very clear about who they decided they were at a young
Mhm.
age. What story have you created for yourself? And if you realize that that's not the story you want to keep telling yourself, much like a screenwriter, you can rewrite the script of your life and then be the director
Yeah.
and now direct a different story where you
Yeah.
can show up and have the and now when you show up to have conversations with your husband or your wife or your kids,
Yeah.
you can ask, what scene do I need to create right now to fulfill on my role of being a world-class mom or dad or world-class business owner? And so it
Yeah.
helps you not get triggered so much by the personal things that people may say, and it allows you to stay committed to what you want with unshakable confidence.
Yeah, I love that so much. And it just reminds me of that concept that, if you think about a computer, we're all made with the same hardware. We've all got two ears, two eyes, a mouth, a head, a body, legs, arms, but it's the software we run that
Mhm,
determines the life that we live. And we can change that software. Like you would update a computer, we can update that software and those stories we're telling ourselves. But it's often the old software that's causing bugs, right? So the stories from when we're growing up, and we've all got them.
mhm,
You actually just reminded me of something really traumatic in my journey that I had to do, and that was when I went through Speakers Institute. I remember um, they made us partway through that training do exactly that exercise. We had to identify some software that was running
mhm.
that was getting in the way of us achieving what we were there to achieve, and I had to go out of the room and make a phone call to actually we all got the chance to go out of the room. This was the thing. We got the chance to go out of the room and make the phone call to apologize to somebody who we felt, same sort of thing. Someone who we felt had wronged us, one of our parents usually, and it was something that we were still holding on to. But for whatever reason, I was the person he decided to pull up the front, and I had to do the call in front of the whole group, which was just I'd actually wiped it out of my memory, and you've just reminded me of it. So thanks.
How did you feel afterwards, after doing something that was that difficult?
It's funny because yes, it was a release on me, and it felt like I was letting something go, and also getting clarity around, like you said, it's that when the response comes back and they're like, "Oh, I didn't even realize you were still thinking about that." Like, "Oh, I'd
Mhm,
forgotten about it." And you're thinking, "I've built this up for all these years. I've made this a big thing and it wasn't a thing." Um, but all I could think of afterwards was, what is that person thinking right now? They've just out of the blue received this phone call from me. Um, all I could think about was what's going through their head. And of course, a week later, I rang them and chatted with them. They're like, "Are you dying? Are you okay?" Like, what's happening in your life that made you make that phone call? I never came clean because I knew that they would have been horrified if they found out that I'd made that phone call in front of an entire group of people. But it was a release. But
mhm,
the funny thing is, it's like opening. It really is opening a can of worms, isn't it? Because you never stop that journey. It's not like you deal with one of those stories and you're fixed, you're cured, you're good to go. We've got
mhm.
so many of them. It's the practice of doing it and recognizing it. And I think that was the beginning of a self-awareness journey that was really powerful in my growth and my stepping into what I'm doing now. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now if I hadn't learned how to identify and be more self-aware of some of those things that were holding me back, that were not on anyone else. They were on me. They were
Mhm,
within me. And it does come down to that fear of, it's not just speaking on stage. Speaking on stage is something that,
Is it
absolutely
easy for you?
difficult.
Do you like speaking
No.
on stage?
Look, I love impacting people. I love, I remember a number of years ago, I got asked to speak at my first event, and it was not something I intended to do. I absolutely, if anyone said to me, one day you're going to be keynote speaking on stages of thousands of people, I would have looked at them and laughed, and just said, no way, like it's just not going to happen.
Mhm.
And I remember getting asked to speak, and I knew my stuff back to front. So it wasn't as though what I was sharing was going to be a hard thing to share, because I just knew it. It just came out. The challenge for me was there was a fear there that I hadn't identified yet. And I was so scared to go out there. And I remember ringing my coach at the time and I said, what on earth, how, because she was a speaker as well. And I said, how do you do this? How do you do this? And she said, okay, first of all, like I was at the verge of throwing up. I was back there. I was like, this, I can't get out there. I can't do this. She said, what are you afraid of? And I said, my biggest fear is that they won't like me and they won't like what I say. She said, okay, number one, I'm going to tell you this and I want you to remember it. And I remind myself of this every
Mhm.
day. It is none of your business what other people think of you.
Mhm.
And you can't change it anyway. Number two, your job is not to impact everyone in that room. It's to impact one person. So if you're speaking in front of 300, 1,000 people, it doesn't matter. You get out there and you serve and you know that you're impacting one person in that room. And
Mhm.
that's all you're there to do. Um, but the other thing she said to me, and this was something I learned to use as a tool, was I'm really glad you feel the way you do. And I'll give you some tools to help you, and I'll steer you towards some people that can help you with this so that you can learn how to overcome those nerves enough that you can deliver, because once you start, you get on a roll and you're good. And she was so right. But this is what she
Mhm.
said to me. The day you don't care and the day you're not nervous is the day you need to stop stepping out there.
That's it.
Because she said it's the day you stop caring.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I had to start using was, okay, good. This is a check. I feel really nervous.
Yes.
I'm about to do this.
That's a
That's
good thing.
good. Yeah. But it's then about
Yeah.
using tools to help. And I've got a few little mindfulness things that I do. And I sometimes talk to our students about that. And, I always have a game on song I'll play right before I get out there and I move my body. And I've
Mhm.
got some things, affirmations I have to say, because it is about serving, right? But it's a good thing to be nervous. And I think it was that switch in mindset between being nervous is bad, which for whatever reason I had learned that it was a bad thing. Maybe because I was comparing myself as a kid to others that seemed to find it really easy to get out there on stage and, do the class play.
Mhm.
But learning that actually being nervous is a really normal thing and a really good thing, right?
Yeah, similar to what my first acting teacher told us. She said, "When you guys start performing and getting up in front of audiences," she said, "the reality of this is 30% of the people that you are in front of, they're gonna like you, they're gonna resonate with what you're doing, they're gonna maybe think you're good looking or whatever, that you just the way you do your thing is charming and they're gonna like you. 30% of the people that hear you or see you in your stuff, they're not going to like you. They are not going to like you. They're going to think that they're going to hate the sound of your voice. They're going to think that your nose looks like it got punched in. They're going to want something to criticize and just have a target to make fun of."
Yep.
And then she said the other 40% of the people out there don't care. So she said, it's not your job, similar to what your mentor told you, in that it's not your job to please everyone and to make sure that everyone likes you. Your job is to serve the role that you're playing, knowing that you're going to find your tribe.
Yeah.
You've got to be authentic, though, about you doing this, because if you show up generically trying to serve everyone, no one is going to know who you are or what you stand for. But if you dial in and you have your brand and your unique personal way of showing up and connecting with people, you're going to find your tribe. And that requires some trust and some faith and a safe environment to start practicing that. But
Yeah.
it sounds like with what you're doing, being able to coach and teach people how to do a lot of this stuff, like you said, a lot of it is making that impact on other people. And even if it's just one person, knowing that you've made that difference in someone's life, that can be life changing.
Absolutely. And I believe that every person that we impact has a ripple effect. We don't get to decide what that impact is. Our job is to, like what you said before, is to give our gifts to people and to recognize what those gifts are. And sometimes that in itself is a little bit of a journey, but to give of those gifts and go, it's not up to me to decide how those gifts get used or how
Mhm.
they're received at the other end. My job is to keep delivering them. And I think a lot of people in business think that what they're doing, they might only have 3 or 4 customers and they think, well, I'm not making an impact. What does it matter? One of those people has an incredible ripple effect.
Mhm.
By impacting that person, even if it's by sharing your product that changes someone's life, um, gives them more energy, changes their health journey, just maybe makes them feel a little more confident, like what you're doing, Colin. They show up differently for their partner, for their kids, for their work colleagues.
Yeah.
And just think, if mum stops yelling or she's got more energy and it impacts that child's life a little bit more, you've now had an impact on another human's entire future.
Yep.
So I think we sometimes really downplay the impact we can have on just one person, because
Yep.
one person can have a huge ripple effect. I feel like you're about to say
Absolutely.
something profound there and I interrupted you.
No, everything you're saying is, I can think of several instances in my life where that's been the thing.
Yeah,
Just being okay with who you are and being able to
yeah,
show up freely self-expressed, and especially when it comes to direct marketing, because I've done some of that myself.
you've been in this
And
space, right? You understand it. Yeah.
yeah, and there can be a tinge of well, I don't want people to think that I'm trying to sell them something,
Mm.
and so you can allow your own insecurities about something get in the way of you just being authentic and
Yeah,
sharing your story about why it is that you do what you do. And people resonate with stories more than they do with them
absolutely. Yeah,
trying to sell something. So it really just comes down to, what do you love? And
yeah.
when you love something, you're more apt to talk about it and share it. But it's about learning some of these ways to practice that, and that's what I do for my clients.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. I'm really about taking action. And anytime that anyone's listening to this podcast, I want them to walk away, first of all, with something that they can implement straight away, but also some tools that they can go on and continue using. So, just really quickly, do you have, say, 1 to 3 things that people could do today to start showing up with more clarity and more confidence in their life?
Yep. So I would say the first one again is that choose your 3 core values
Yep.
of who you choose to be lived by. And that way, again, if you're feeling nervous about doing something, you can say, well, what would bravery do in this moment? What would loving connection do? What would patience do in this situation? So I would say that's the first one. Second thing I would say is, get clear about what it is that you are wanting to create. What is your end goal? My acting teacher from day one said, it's going to take you 10 years to be a working actor. It's going to take you 20 years to be a good working actor. And if you're not up for that type of a commitment, there's the door. So I would say you can't dabble and be successful with anything. I would
Yep.
say the second thing is commit, commit 1,000%, until you've realized that if it's something that you want to continue to do or not. But unless you fully commit to something, you're not going to truly know whether or not this is something that is going to be something that you want to do.
Yep.
And it's important to remember to enjoy the process
Yep.
and not get attached to the outcome of what someone is going to say or what they're not going to say. It's truly just showing up and reminding yourself, we're all here on this journey to create and build and connect, and however we can show up to be able to, again, serve other people is, to me, the most fulfilling thing. As much as I love being in front of the camera and shooting my movies and TV shows, a lot of it is selfish in the sense that I get to do all these really fun, cool things. What I find incredibly rewarding, though, too, is being in front of an audience or in my groups where I share some of these techniques, and then I see these light bulb moments go off, and some of the people that I share some of this information with, to the point where people are like, "Oh my God, you've changed my life. This has been transformational. I feel like I now feel like I've got the ability to share something that I was embarrassed to share in the past. And I would say you got to surround yourself with a community of people that are going to continually remind you of who you are,
Yep.
because it's too easy to be discouraged and to listen
Yeah.
to that negative voice in your head, which is really your brain just trying to keep you safe. But the problem with that is that that keeps us in our comfort zones, and it's all perceived. It's a misconception about what is real and what's not real. And so it's important to remind yourself and be surrounded by people who will remind you of what you're up to. And I can't tell you how many times where I've been like, after an audition, I want to quit this. I don't want to do this. And in the world of acting, in my book, I did the calculations of the 2,000 auditions that I've been on. If you look at my IMDb page, I only have like 50 credits to my name. So that's like a 2% success rate. So in the world of acting, I could look at it, either I failed 98% of the time, or 2% of the time I get to do amazing movies and travel the world and work with incredible actors and creative people. And so really it's just understanding and knowing that a lot of what you do, you got to know the game that you're playing and understand that for you to grow your business, if that means talking to 20 people and getting 3 yeses, that's the game. And you just
Yep.
keep talking and keep putting your message out there, knowing it's going to resonate with someone.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. So powerful. So let's talk about those books. You've got now 2 books. One really is more of an action oriented print. So do you want to share with everybody what you've got there and how they can get hold of those?
Yes. Well, I just happen to have my book
Yeah.
right here, Sam. So this is my
Imagine
first
that.
book, Agile Artist: Life Lessons from Hollywood and Beyond. And it really is just my journey from going from that starts off in my experience living across the street from the World Trade Center, and how that experience impacted my life to go out to Hollywood. And then everything that I learned along the journey from my acting teachers and from my failures of not getting the job and the successes of getting the job that you can implement into your life. A lot of it is mindset, and some of it is practical application of how to communicate more effectively with people,
Mhm.
how I navigated my cancer journey, and then from that sprung the my manifestation playbook, which is a daily planner, and this is designed to help you create each day intentionally how you as you choose what you want at the end of your 90 days, and then being connected to that inspirational goal, and then creating your week and your day based on who you choose to be, to show up, to play that role, to fulfill on making that goal happen. And it's a
Love it.
spiritually minded planner, because a lot of what I talk about and what I implement and coach on is you've got to be fully integrated in mind, body, and spirit in order to be successful in whatever it is that you do.
Yeah.
And it's not enough to just know something. You've got to really live it, breathe it, fulfill on it. And so a lot of what the day is designed to do is to get you intentional about how much water you're drinking, your workouts, some meditation. These are the 7 chakras. And there's some journaling here that are based on the 7 chakras and the mantras of I know, I see, I feel, I love. And so intentionally creating who you want to be helps you
Yeah.
then live into that reality. Otherwise, we will allow the world and our circumstances dictate who we are.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult. It's like trying to walk uphill with a boulder attached to your back if you're not intentionally creating who you need to be in order to fulfill on this. And after you do this for a while, you start to have an expanded self identity of yourself, because you're going to start attracting people on that energetic level that you radiate with. And I'm sure um, the secret and the law of attraction.
Mhm.
Rhonda Byrne, I believe her name was, who
Yeah.
created the documentary and who's Australian. Um, One of my first acting life coaches is the one who introduced me to the manifestation. And it for some people, it may sound a little woo woo, But really, it's not just about hoping and praying and having positive thoughts. It truly is getting specific about what you want to create, much like world-class athletes will envision and visualize what, like skiers before they go down the path, you can see them visualizing what it is that where their path is.
Mm.
And a lot of this is getting specific about what you want to create, what your business is going to look like, what your relationship is going to look like, and then being grateful, inviting gratitude into what it is that you have already, so that you are radiating with that energetic frequency of, I don't need anything from you. I'm here to share with you something that I love. And that's what people connect with.
Yeah,
And then doing that consistently by having a roadmap to do it will help you just create these habits that actually will
I love
allow
that.
that to emerge instead of
Yeah.
you trying to force it.
Yeah, super powerful. So, um, people listening to this we'll put the link in the show notes, but they can get these off Amazon, I believe.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Or
And I'm
through
not
your
sure if,
website, or just, so what if they're in Australia? Can they get them from your website, or they
yeah,
go through Amazon?
so this is the thing with Amazon. I'm not sure if they're available in Australia.
Because we're a little old island that just got internet, right?
Yeah, try it. If not, you can
Yeah.
always shoot me an email, info@colinegglesfield.com, and we can always, I can send you an autographed copy and we can arrange to make that work. I've
Yeah,
also,
no one's gonna try now. They're all gonna be just doing that. I love
um,
it.
but I did send it's a, basically it's a ebook on how to be more confident in front of the camera. It's a video shoot guide so that you can send to anyone and of your subscribers. And what it does is it will help you get more of a technical understanding of camera placement, lighting,
Yep,
framing. And then in there, there's a QR code that if you're interested in having a discovery call with me, what I do is I like to get on a Zoom call like this and just, if anyone is interested in getting some support with overcoming their fear of public speaking or presenting or whatever it is. I do a discovery call and find out if working together may be a good fit for us. And totally open and welcome to for anyone who's interested in setting one of those up. You can go to my website, colinegglesfield.com. I'm on Instagram at Colin Egglesfield. And I've got with my Beyond Impact Communications Mastery, I've got another Instagram uh, at beyondimpact.mastery. So I'm all over the place. I do a podcast called Beyond Impact as well. And you can tune into that. And that's
and we'll tag
pretty much
all
it.
of that into the show notes. And of course, you are doing online workshops as well, which is through Beyond Impact. People can find out about them there, yeah?
Yep. Yep. I do an 8-week course. It's virtual, so you can be anywhere in the world and do this where I give you practice in giving you some scripts. We analyze those scripts. So it a uh, gives you practice and a practical framework for how you can then show up and have a deeper understanding and some insight on how to have more impactful and intentional conversations. And then I give you homework assignments to put yourself on camera to practice some of these scripts. And we show up and we give feedback to each other. And this may sound uncomfortable, but like we were saying earlier, the more that you can allow yourself to be seen and allow these, what you perceive to be are your insecurities, shine a light on them, the more you'll start to realize that a lot of what we are afraid of people seeing are some of the micro traumas that we've experienced that we're afraid for people to see. But when people
Yeah.
see those, they see that you're a real person and that you have what we are attracted to are people who have challenges in their life and yet they keep moving forward anyway. That's why
Yeah.
we fall in love with our favorite superheroes and our favorite characters in our movies and TV shows. It's because they faced a challenge and they had to grow in some way or another to be able to overcome that challenge. And
Yeah.
that's a big reason why we want to be around people are uh, who are up to important things in life because it requires us to overcome these challenges and it's inspiring. So
Yeah.
this is what
Yeah.
excites me and what I love to support people in overcoming as well.
Amazing. I love it. Well, Colin, I've got 4 quick questions to ask you just before
Sure.
we wrap up. My favorite questions. So, you've already told us about your books, but I want to know, what is your favorite book for us to add to our accelerator book list?
I would say one of my new favorite books, this guy's name is Jerry Hussey. He's an Irish author. It's
Yeah.
I Am, I Can, I Will. And you can see that.
Yeah.
It's again, just essentially a great framework for how to approach life. Talks a lot about our subconscious blind spots, the messaging that we tell ourselves, and it's currently my favorite read right now.
I love it. All right. If you could have a superpower, any superpower, what would it be and why?
I was thinking about this. I would love the ability to fly like Superman, but in terms of the superpower of what I'm doing right now, I would love the superpower to be able to I would say maybe be able to understand what people are, maybe read their minds and be able to really know what they're really going through. Because I think most of the time we don't always necessarily understand what people are going through.
Yeah.
And if we were able to know what people were really going through, I think our conversations would be a lot different and a lot
Hmm.
more kind.
Yeah.
And I think if we all had that superpower, the world would be a better place.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing how often we find out later on what was really going on for someone, and that
Right.
we think, wow, I would have handled that totally differently.
Yeah. Yep.
Your favorite quote?
So Rumi is one of my favorite philosophers and uh, writers. And one of my favorite quotes from him is, out beyond the ideas of right doing and wrongdoing, there is a field. I'll meet you there.
Right. I love that.
So it reminds me that there's always going to be what we perceive to be the problem or the situation
Mm.
or what's right or what's wrong. And as long as we focus on what's on the other side of that, that's
Yep.
where life is magical and worth living.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing. Last question, definitely my favorite. If you could go back in time and say one thing to your past self, what would that be?
There's so many things. I would say,
You get one. You get one thing. I'm going to send you back in time.
yeah, I would say trust your intuition.
Mm.
I think
Yep.
I found myself listening a lot to other people because of that people pleasing mentality I had, whether it was agents or managers. And I no one knows you better than you know yourself. And as much as people may think that they're helping and supporting and giving you the right advice, only you really know what's right for you. And so I would say, Colin, just listen more to yourself and take the actions that are aligned with that.
Yep. Yep. Perfect. Brilliant place to wrap this up. Thank you again so much, Colin, for joining us today.
You're
I know
welcome.
you're flat out busy and you're in between travels, so we really appreciate you taking this time out and for sewing into myself as well as our amazing listeners. So thanks again for jumping on in and joining me.
Sam, thank you for providing the opportunity for me to share my story, and anything I can do to support you, let me know.
Amazing. And thanks again, of course, to our beautiful listeners for tuning in this week. We really value and appreciate your time. And I really want to encourage you guys, take something away from this, implement it straight away while you're in state, while you're inspired, while you're excited. Don't wait for tomorrow. Do something right now. So whether or not that's implementing one of the strategies that Colin gave today, or tapping into one of the resources that he has, grab a copy of his book or his amazing 90-day planner, or maybe check out his Beyond Impact website and have a look at how you can keep learning on this journey, but keep learning. That's the most important thing. So thanks again for tuning on in. So great to have all you guys. And again, thanks, Colin. That's it from us. Bye for now, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this episode of the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. If you love listening and you found that this was helpful for your direct selling business, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also check out the recommended video that's popped up on your screen right here. I look forward to seeing you again next time. Bye for now.